Han Li, possessing the Zushinding, was exposed to several great Nascent Soul cultivators in the palace. Under their covetous stares, he was outnumbered and at a disadvantage. Han Li, who was at the mid-Nascent Soul stage, how would he handle this? That heaven-reaching spirit treasure, the Zushinding. This spirit treasure is on you, isn't it? Fellow Taoist. Supreme Master Han stared at Han Li and said nonchalantly, a heaven-reaching spirit treasure. Fellow Taoist Han possesses such a treasure. This time, it was old Ju who let out a low cry. He looked at Han Li with an expression of disbelief, which also contained a hint of greed. The old monk in the embroidered robe was naturally just as astonished. He couldn't help but size Han Li up as well. Before coming here, these two, like Supreme Master Han, had briefly looked into Han Li's background. They knew he was from Tianan. For a cultivator from such a small place, to actually possess something like a heaven-reaching spirit treasure, it was truly and utterly shocking to both of them. The Zushinding. So that's how it is. I don't mind answering your question, Brother Han Li. But before that, I'd like you to answer a question of mine. Fellow Taoist, how are you so certain that I possess this cauldron? And what is the relationship between your Void Spirit Hall and this cauldron? Surprisingly, Han Li didn't deny it immediately. Instead, a faint, unreadable smile appeared on his face. So, you do indeed possess the cauldron. As for how I knew the cauldron was on you, fellow Taoist, it's not much of a secret. The Zilu Juwo you cultivate, fellow Taoist, was fused with something that came with the Zushinding, obtained from the Qianlun ice flame, wasn't it? In this world, apart from the replica Qianlun Ding made by my palace, in the mortal realm, only the Zushinding should possess this cold flame, and it just so happens that a short while ago, I cultivated my Qianlun ice flame to its peak. My senses for a lower-level Qianlun ice flame are therefore naturally and incredibly sharp, although he was already 70 to 80% certain in his heart that the Sutia cauldron was on Han Li. Upon hearing this, in revered Han Li's eyes, a hint of fanaticism still couldn't help but flash. In that case, when you first saw me, you already knew I had the Sutia cauldron, Han Li asked with a frown. Indeed, but I didn't expect that Brother Han wouldn't deny it at all. That was truly beyond my expectations. Some of the excuses I had prepared are now useless, and the Sutia cauldron was the personal spirit treasure of my sect's founding ancestor, Fairy Bingpo. Back then, our ancestor carried this treasure with her as she traveled the world. When she returned over 100 years later, the cauldron's whereabouts were unknown. It was only after that the spirit nurturing hall was built. I have no interest in asking how you obtained this treasure, but this item is indeed the property of my sect. As long as you hand it over, I will definitely not harm a fellow cultivator like you. Revered Han Li said to Han Li, one word at a time, her face solemn. Han Li first showed a look of dawning realization, but then he chuckled lightly, staring at Revered Han Li without saying a word. Seeing Han Li act so brazenly, Revered Han Li's pupils shrank, and her gaze turned sinister. I heard from Meng Yao that Brother Han's divine abilities are astonishing. Although you're only at the Nascent Soul stage, your skills are no less than those of a late-stage cultivator. Even demonic beasts like the silver-winged Yaksha are unable to do anything to you. If we were in any other place, at any other time, I might indeed be unable to do anything to you, fellow Taoist. But now, we are inside a spell formation, and in the sealed melody cave. What's more, you only have 30% of your spiritual power left at most, while the effects of my secret art have not yet faded. Both my spiritual power and my body are at their absolute peak. Do I even need to spell out your chances of winning? The golden glint in Revered Shi's eyes began to intensify. The middle-aged man from Green Mountain and Bai Mengtian watched Han Li, their faces becoming grave, as if facing a great enemy. I never thought that after I helped you break through your bottleneck, I would end up being used by you. Fellow Taoist, I, Shai, have always been this way. Repaying kindness with enmity, you say. The corner of Han Li's mouth curled up. A cold sneer appeared on his face. I, Shai, did repay you. Did I not? Not only my refined, I gave you a copy of the Han Yen spell formula, and the secret art that I, this old man, spent hundreds of years painstakingly devising. The one for breaking through the bottleneck. I also gave you a copy of that. Besides, the reason you, fellow Taoist Han, were willing to help, the biggest reason, wasn't it because you wanted to see the effects of this secret art for yourself? So, you could learn from it? How can you call that repaying kindness with enmity? Revered Chai snorted. Am I wrong? There seems to be some truth in what you say, but the one trapped in this formation right now, I'm not the only one. The matter of the heaven-reaching spirit treasure is of great importance. Fellow Taoist, surely you don't intend to silence all the witnesses. Han Li glanced sideways at the monk and Olju, and said faintly. When these two heard what Han Li said, their expressions changed drastically, especially the monk, who looked down at the small cauldron in his hand, his gaze flickering with uncertainty. Hey, fellow Taoist, you don't need to waste your breath. I have known these two fellow Taoists for many years. Why would they fall for your attempt to sow discord? A murderous aura flashed across Reverechi's face, but it vanished in an instant. This matter is between fellow Taoist Shai and your esteemed self. I have no interest in getting involved. Settle it yourselves. Olju gave Han Li a cold look. His figure suddenly flickered. The next moment, he appeared at the edge of the glowing mist, looking as if he had nothing to do with the matter. When Master Han witnessed this, the corner of his eye twitched slightly. For fellow Taoist Han to come to this place, I had assumed it was to congratulate Brother Han Li on his breakthrough. How about this? If this so-called Zushin Cauldron is truly your property, fellow Taoist Han can simply return the treasure, and you, in turn, will offer fellow Taoist Han some compensation. What do you say? For cultivators who have reached our level, it is always best to act with peace in mind. The monk pondered for a moment, and then spoke as such. He actually intended to mediate the matter. My palace is currently in a time of crisis. I, Shai, have no desire for a life-or-death battle. As long as fellow Taoist Han is willing to hand over the cauldron, I will naturally pay a large sum of spirit stones. The amount will be so great that Brother Han, from this day forward, will never have to worry about spirit stones again. Upon hearing this, Master Han Li's expression softened, but Han Li only let out a cold laugh when he heard this. He raised his hand and looked to the sky, not saying a single word. Seeing Han Li's gesture, his shoulders trembled slightly. The blue flames around his body suddenly flared up to twice their size, his entire being transformed into ardent fireball, shimmering with blue light. The middle-aged man in golden robes and by mention also formed hand seals. One of them shot out a dozen or so crystal-clear flying swords from his body. The other flicked her sleeve, and two pitch-black short dagger axes flew out instantly. They circled and danced in front of the pair, letting out a strange, wailing sound. Seeing this, the monk, with a look of helplessness, softly chanted a Buddha's name. He then also flew towards the edge of the glowing mist. It seemed that, like that jailer before, he no longer planned to interfere in this matter. Model. But the monk suddenly changed direction in midair, shooting directly towards Han Li. Before Han Li could even understand what the other was doing, the monk's voice suddenly transmitted into his ear, causing Han Li to freeze for a moment, a strange expression crossing his face. Take this Qianlin cauldron. When the fight starts, I will lend you a hand. As he spoke, the monk suddenly flicked his hand, and a ball of blue light shot straight towards Han Li. It was precisely that Qianlin cauldron. Moju, what are you doing? Grand Master Hinai roared in fury, although he didn't know why the monk would suddenly help him. With a treasure being delivered to his doorstep, Han Li certainly wasn't going to be polite. With a grand flick of his sleeve, he gently motioned, and a sheet of azure light swept out, about to pull the cauldron into his sleeve. Seeing this, Grand Master Hinai's expression darkened. He abruptly formed a hand seal with one hand, and pointed swiftly at the small cauldron. With a pu sound, the small cauldron, which had been perfectly calm, stopped dead in midair. Then, its lid flew off, and a fierce blue light flared from within. It then wrapped around the cauldron and shot off, pulling it back towards Grand Master Hinai. So, you did tamper with it. The robed monk let out a low, deep grunt. Already prepared, he made a grasping motion in the empty air with one hand. Instantly, a hand of green light appeared above the cauldron, and swooped down to grab it, intending to secure the cauldron again. Break! Grand Master Hinai's pupils flashed with a brilliant golden light. As he boomed like thunder, a rumbling sound immediately followed. The back of the large green hand began to distort, and an ancient rune, flashing with golden light, materialized there out of thin air. Then, with a tremendous boom, the ancient script immediately burst apart. A golden gleam flashed, unleashing immense power, completely annihilating the giant hand. Song of Great Righteousness, you actually cultivate Confucian techniques, the monk blurted out in a low cry. But exalted Han Li paid him no mind at all. With a single hand gesture, the small cauldron immediately continued to fly away. He was about to destroy this prize. But, in that very instant, a stream of green silk, shot out bizarrely from the nearby void. In a flash of light, it wrapped around the small cauldron and zipped back. It gave no one else a chance to react at all. Exalted Hanli was startled. Without thinking, he formed a hand seal, and a sharp, single word burst from his lips. Break. Golden ancient script exploded consecutively on the green silk. The rumbling sound was deafening, but the green threads only scattered slightly, before immediately returning to their original state, pulling the small cauldron into another person's hand, and in front of this person hovered another cauldron, several inches in size. Floating patterns drifted across its surface. Its appearance was actually 50 to 60% similar to the Qianlan cauldron, and that stream of green silk was precisely what had flown out from this cauldron. The Sutia cauldron. Upon seeing this, Exalted Hanli muttered to himself. This person was, of course, Hanli, who had just summoned the Sutia cauldron. Seeing that he had snatched the Qianlan cauldron, he immediately tapped the air in front of the Sutia cauldron. A light clang echoed. Several more streams of green silk shot out from the cauldron, completely wrapping the Qianlan cauldron into a shimmering green silk ball. Then, with a flick of his embroidered robe, he stored the green ball in his sleeve. Only then, with a blank expression, did he look towards Exalted Hanli. A cold sneer appeared on his lips. Good, very good. To think you'd force me to use the Sutia cauldron so soon. But with your level of cultivation, at most, he's only practiced the Tongbao formula to the first level. A painting like this can only unleash a mere fraction of this spirit treasure's power. Taoist Master Moju, I never expected that you would make such an unwise choice. Are you forcing me to act against you as well? Seeing the Qianlan cauldron being taken, Han Lishangren was not angered. Instead, he sighed lightly and said to the monk, I have known cultivator Han for over 100 years. What I'm doing is merely for self-preservation. I do not wish for your esteemed palace to kill fellow Taoist Han, and then silence me afterward, with something as major as a heaven-reaching spirit treasure involved. Cultivator Han never intended to let me leave, did he? I am just a rogue cultivator, unlike fellow Taoist Long, who has deep connections with your palace. The monk in the gray robe took out from his sleeve a shimmering green wooden fish. His expression was unusually calm. Master Moju, what do you mean by that? The old woman, who had retreated to the side, heard this. A golden light flashed in her eyes, as she asked coldly, Fellow Taoist, why bother to keep hiding it? Others may not be clear on this matter, but I know quite a bit. The Liu Kui sect led by fellow Taoist Long, isn't it actually an outer branch of the small extremity palace? Fellow Taoist Long is, in fact, one of the outer elders of the small extremity palace. Am I wrong? The monk in the gray robe said with a determined expression. I never thought you would know of this, Master. Elder Long. It seems you no longer need to wait for an opportunity. Let's attack together. Han Lishangren was silent for a moment. Then he finally dropped the pretense. Hey. It seems I can't be lazy after all. However, Great Elder, regarding the matter of the Zushin cauldron, you didn't tell me beforehand. The Great of the Che Kingdom. Do you have to keep secrets even from us, the elders of the 10,000 Gate sect? Old Yu's face was as grim as water. A yellow light flashed on his hand. A long dragon-headed staff appeared in his hand. Then towards Hanli Shangren, he suddenly said in a cold voice, the reason this old man did this was also for the sake of secrecy. Be that as it may, we should capture these two now, and then seize this cauldron. With this cauldron as the treasure of our main palace, I believe that in the future, even if we face a more powerful opponent, it will be enough to repel them. Hanli Shangren replied, somewhat evasively, leave fellow Taoist Moju to me. You three first take care of that Brett surnamed Han and seize the Sutia cauldron. The wrinkles on old Yu's face twitched. He was still a bit dissatisfied, but he still nodded and said, fine, let's do it that way. Seeing this, Hanli Shangren no longer hesitated. With a flip of one hand, a light blue, circular plate silently appeared in his hand. His other hand quickly began to form a magic seal. Not good. He's about to activate the stillness formation. Quick, stop him. The monk in the tortoise robe, upon seeing Hanli Shangren's actions, said with a change in expression. He then flung his hand out, and a ball of emerald green light shot forth. He had actually sent the wooden fish in his hand flying out. Then, he urged the incantation. A faint, ethereal thump came from the wooden fish. This sound was like the hollow echo of an empty drum, and also like a peddler's chant. It made anyone who heard it feel their spirit waver. It felt as if their primordial spirit was about to leave their body. but everyone present was a master of divine arts. The old woman, especially, did not wait for the second sound from the wooden fish. She came to her senses in that instant. She let out a cold snort. The staff in her hand pointed forward furiously. A deep yellow, thick beam of sword energy shot out in a flash. Seeing this, the turtle-robed monk could no longer channel his yin technique. He hastily poured his spiritual power into the wooden fish. The treasure spun rapidly in the air, swelling to about 10 feet in size. Almost like a giant boulder, it flew directly towards the beam of light. Instantly, a deafening explosion erupted. The wooden fish was now locked in a struggle with the beam. Meanwhile, on the other side, revered Han Li's hand seals hadn't stopped at all. The formation disc in her hand even began to emit a four-colored spiritual light. Han Li let out a soft breath. She had no intention of letting revered Han Li activate her formation so easily. Raising a single hand, she flicked all 5 fingers. With that, azure sword energy instantly shot out from her fingertips. Its target was none other than the one continuously tapping on the formation disc. Revered Han Li. The azure sword energy split into over 10 streaks of green and red light. They had only flown halfway when they were intercepted by several beams of white sword energy and, to streaks of black light, they tangled together, emitting bursts of spiritual light. The ones who intervened were none other than Bai Mengshen, and that middle-aged man in green. Seeing her sword energy instantly shattered into pieces, Han Li frowned. Instead of rushing to attack again, to stop revered Han Li from casting her spell, she just flicked her elegant robes. Dozens of golden flying blades shot out, forming a golden barrier of light to protect herself. Then, with a cold gaze, she watched revered Han Li's every move. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound came from below her. Revered Han Li was startled, but immediately, with a flash of spiritual light around her body, her figure rose into the air from the pillar of light. And just at that moment, the purple light pillar below vanished into thin air. But a glowing, circular, array formation appeared. Han Li felt a sudden, powerful suction force from below, making his body feel as heavy as a mountain, pulling him straight down. At the same time, the area around him flashed with radiant light. Strange ripples of energy undulated one after another. Before he had time to cast a spell, the scene around him abruptly changed. He found himself in a void filled with wind and snow. Countless snowflakes fell from the sky, and the ground below was a sheet of crystal clear ice. This was a land of glaciers. The snow illusion tree. Interesting. Han Li chuckled softly as his feet touched the ground, but there wasn't a trace of a smile on his face. At this point, the pressure on his body grew even more intense. He believed that if he hadn't practiced the Nether King Ju, his body would have truly struggled to bear it. But compared to the gravity in Jin Si's mausoleum, it naturally couldn't even be mentioned in the same breath. Thinking this, Han Li's thoughts stirred. Golden sword light swirled around him, and the heavy gravity was instantly severed completely. His figure, enveloped in a ball of golden light, slowly began to rise again. Han Li now scanned his surroundings. His eyes narrowed, a sharp light flashing within them. The entire place was a vast expanse of white. All the other people were nowhere to be seen. In this seemingly endless place, it was as if he was the only living person. He raised his head and gazed at the sky again. The giant snowflakes falling from above seemed to be truly endless. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from his eyes. Then, with a sharp cry, the golden light revolving around him shot out more than 10 beams of light. Their target was a point high in the sky, a seemingly empty spot in the void. A series of explosions echoed from the void. Golden and white glows immediately intertwined, flickering erratically. Then, more than a dozen small arrows appeared. These flying arrows were only a few inches in size, but each one was crystal clear. A moment ago, they had taken the opportunity to hide within the wind and snow, and silently shot towards Han Li. But Han Li discovered them a step ahead. With a casual wave, he released a sword gleam that easily exposed their tracks. Huh! A surprised sound came from an unknown location. Judging by the sound, it was Bai Mengshen's voice, and it was filled with surprise. But those dozen or so flying arrows flickered once, and again vanished without a trace in the wind and snow. Han Li raised an eyebrow. Without a second thought, he formed a hand seal. Instantly, the golden light around his body trembled, and he shot out over a dozen small golden swords. Each one was dazzlingly golden, and radiated a chilling aura. After these small swords circled once, they suddenly scattered in all directions, shooting out in a counterattack. As a result, another series of rumbling sounds was heard. Those dozen or so golden and silver flying swords were accurately forced out of hiding by each of the golden swords. Then, under the urging of Han Li's spell, the two types of flying swords buzzed loudly at the same time. The golden lights and gleams intertwined as they began to clash. Seeing this, a sharp light flashed in Han Li's eyes. A strange incantation suddenly came from his mouth. A muffled groan was heard from somewhere within the wind and snow. Dozens of yards away, a ball of white light erupted, revealing a woman in flowing white robes. At the same time, she was clutching her head with both hands, her beautiful face twisted in pain. It was Bai Mengxian, who had been hit by Han Li's divine soul thorn secret art. With her divine sense thrown into chaos, her flying swords, which had been evenly matched against Han Li's, couldn't help but dim their spiritual light. Their power was greatly reduced. Seeing this, Han Li seized the opportunity. He suddenly urged his power, and the golden light from his dozen or so azure bamboo cloud-twined swords flared brilliantly. It circled around the now sluggish heavy swords. A loud cracking sound erupted. Of the dozen or so blades, more than half were sliced into by the golden flying sword. The spiritual light of the remaining few swords also dimmed in an instant. Their buzzing was incessant, appearing to be heavily damaged. Just now, from the Lion God Temple, the Baishan woman, who had just regained her senses, was horrified to see her natal treasure destroyed. She was instantly terrified. The mental link caused her to spit out a mouthful of vital blood, but she ignored it and frantically activated her sword technique, trying to recall all the remaining flying swords. Otherwise, if all the flying swords were destroyed, the damage would be far more severe than this. But Han Li had already made his move. How could he so easily let this woman recall her natal flying swords? He quickly raised a hand and pointed at the distant flying swords. Instantly, all the azure bamboo, cloud swords pursued the remaining blades, relentlessly entangling them. Meanwhile, the swords that had no opponents suddenly moved with incredible speed. In just a few flashes, they strangely circled around to get in front of these blades, trapping them in a pincer attack from the front and rear. The sound of sword energy crackled loudly. The flying swords were trapped inside. Han Li once again activated his sword technique, preparing to use the power of his flying swords to utterly destroy the woman's natal treasure. But a furious roar suddenly came from above. "You dare!" Immediately, two streaks of dark red light flashed, and from within the snowflakes above, two snarling black flood dragons shot out. Each was 7 to 8 zhong long, and looked exceptionally ferocious. Han Li's expression was calm, as if he had already anticipated this attack. One hand continued to control his sword technique, while the other was suddenly raised. A scroll, gleaming with red light, was sent flying. Then, amidst a spiritual glow, the treasure unfurled. A burst of clarity emerged from the scroll. Hundreds of ancient gold and silver characters flew out from the book. These ancient characters also materialized, immediately expanding wildly in the wind. Then, they transformed into countless orbs of light, heading straight for the two black Jiao. These two flood dragons didn't hold back either. They relentlessly spewed black light from their mouths, and charged headfirst into the mass of ancient characters. A continuous rumbling sound echoed. Bursts of gold and silver light exploded on the flood dragons' bodies. Not only did it shatter the black mist surrounding the dragons, it also sent the two black Jiao tumbling back, somersaulting several times. These gold and silver runes were each like an incredibly powerful magical tool, and those two black Jiao seemed unable to withstand such a heavy blow. After a low roar, they each reverted to their original forms, revealing they were two short black halberds. Seeing this, Han Li was slightly pleased. He secretly increased the mono he was channeling into the scroll. It instantly became 30% stronger. The red scroll suddenly trembled. Even more ancient characters poured out from the book, illuminating a large patch of the sky above. Then, they gathered their power and struck. With a flash of light, the middle-aged man in green had a grim expression. He was forced to reveal himself from within the encirclement of runes. But without a second word, he raised his hand and recalled the two short black halberds. Then, he flipped his palm, and a small, azure flag suddenly appeared in his hand. The flag was only a few inches in size, but with a single shake, the runes on its surface began to churn. Amidst a great gust of wind, the middle-aged man in green vanished without a trace. All the ancient characters hit nothing but air. Han Li was taken aback by this. On the other side, Han Li hadn't succeeded either, because Bai Mengxian, gritting her teeth, had suddenly brought out a flawless white mirror. The golden light drawn by the flying swords was aimed at Han Li. In just a flash, a milky white beam of light shot out from the mirror's surface. The clusters of golden light were caught off guard. When this beam shone on them, layers of freezing ice instantly appeared on the ships. Ice shards flew everywhere. They turned into clumps of ice, completely sealed within. As for the few remaining weapon ships, they took the opportunity to escape destruction. In a flash, they were retracted into the woman's body. Han Li's gaze shifted back. Seeing this, he let out a cold snort. He immediately pointed his hand several times towards the distance. Instantly, a loud thunderous roar erupted from the small golden arrows. Slender arcs of electricity appeared on the swords. Under the might of the evil warding divine thunder, the blocks of mystical ice shattered inch by inch. The flying swords were freed in an instant. Bai Mengxin's expression changed drastically. She immediately turned the small mirror in her hand, aiming it right at Han Li. But a loud rumbling sound came from behind Han Li. A pair of silver and crimson wings unfurled. With a sharp flap, he vanished in a flash of brilliant light. Bai Mengxin was stunned, but at almost the same time, a fierce gust of wind suddenly swept past her. An arm abruptly reached out from within the wind and pulled her into it. Then, the wind vanished in a flash, leaving no trace of anyone behind. The next moment, with a flicker of silver light, Han Li's figure appeared where Bai Mengxin had just been standing. He looked at the empty space, a murderous look appearing on his face. As his eyes swept the area, a blue light flashed in his pupils. He suddenly flung his hand back. A streak of black light shot out from his sleeve, then vanished in a flash. In a patch of empty space dozens of feet away, the gleam of a sword suddenly flashed. After a low groan, a severed arm slid down bizarrely. Then, a figure in green stumbled into view. It was that middle-aged man in green robes. This man was truly ruthless. Although his arm was severed, his other arm shot out like lightning and grabbed the severed limb. Then, with a flicker of his body, he vanished in a gust of wind. A cold glint flashed in Han Li's eyes, but he didn't command the black light to pursue the man. Instead, he raised his hand and made a gesture. The black gleam instantly teleported, vanishing from its spot. The next moment, it appeared before Han Li. It was a short blade, several inches long. It shimmered with a dark, black light. It was the very blade originally for the humanoid puppet, the blade of attrition. Then, Han Li's figure floated in the wind and snow. He calmly scanned his surroundings. A blue light flickered unceasingly in his pupils. He seemed to be searching for something. Outside the illusion, in another part of the formation, the middle-aged man in green robes was frantically pressing the severed arm against the wound. He quickly applied several talismans. After a flash of white light flowed over it, the severed arm was reattached. What a bizarre magic treasure! It seems Junior Sister Mengdian wasn't exaggerating. This cultivator Han's divine abilities are truly formidable. Junior Sister Mengdian, are you all right? Seeing the wound on his reattached arm had stopped bleeding, the middle-aged man in green robes let out a long sigh of relief. He then turned to look at Bai Mengxin beside him. His face showed a trace of concern. I'm fine. Although my life-bound magic treasure was destroyed, I managed to retrieve about half of it. But these Zhuanbing swords can no longer be used to fight a strong enemy. Senior brother Han Li, the restrictions have no effect on him at all. Moreover, the opponent seems to possess an ability to see through illusions. We use the power of stasis to conceal our movements, but it's completely ineffective up close. Bai Mengxin's face, which was originally abnormally pale, now had the flushes of a rosy color appearing on her cheeks. Her voice was also a little hoarse. I saw everything just now. The opponent is indeed not to be underestimated. If the Sutiating wasn't involved, I really would be unwilling to make such a formidable enemy. However, since we've already taken action, there's absolutely no turning back. I have already resolved the last trace of the backlash from the primordial energy of heaven and earth. Next, I just need you to assist me to kill this person. With my current physical condition, mobilizing all the Icy-che in the Zhuanlu cave for a short time should be just barely possible. No matter how powerful this person is, he will be unable to withstand such a massive amount of Zhuanlu's Icy-che. At this moment, Han Li Shangren was enveloped in a dazzling blue light, but the golden glow within it gradually subsided. He said with a calm expression, mobilizing the Zhuanlu's Icy-che. If we do that, for the next 1,000 years, we won't be able to open the Zhuanlu cave again. Hearing this, the middle-aged man in green was startled. Bai Mengxin's expression also changed drastically. This is a last resort. You'd have already tested him. This person is clearly well versed in orthodox arts, and both his magical treasures and abilities are incredibly potent. What's more, besides having the Sutiading, He also seems to possess a fan that is an imitation spirit treasure. It's equally difficult to deal with. Only by harnessing the power of the entire Zhuanlu cave can I have absolute confidence in killing him. Compared to the Sutiading, sealing the Zhuanlu cave for 1,000 years is a price well worth paying. Hanli Shangren looked at Hanli, who was in stasis in the distance, and said with exceptional calm, upon hearing what the great elder said, the Qingshan man and Bai Mengshan, although they still had lingering doubts in their hearts, couldn't bring themselves to say anything. The revered Hanli flipped a hand, and a token suddenly appeared in his palm, a crystal-clear melody token. Mysterious runes flashed continuously on the token, while the back was imprinted with an image of a mouth, spitting ice and snow from an ice cream cone. Just as he was about to send this token out, and begin casting his spell, his gaze subconsciously swept across the inside of the array, and his expression changed dramatically. Not good. The opponent has actually found the static core of the array. He's about to break out of the formation. You two, hurry and power the magic array. Use whatever means necessary. You must buy me some time. When the Qingshan man heard this, he too looked into the distance in shock. He saw Hanli, who was inside the illusory forest, currently forming hand seals. A massive, 10-foot-long golden greatsword had appeared above his head at some point. Countless arcs of electricity were flashing across it, as it slowly slashed towards a specific point in the static formation. The Qingshan man was shocked. Without a second thought, he flicked his sleeve, and a ball of yellow and green light shot out, blasting straight towards the greatsword. Beside him, Bai Mengshan also raised a hand silently. That white mirror, which had once frozen Hanli's projectile, appeared once again. With a flash from the mirror's surface, several pillars of white light instantly surged out in a flash. The target, however, was Hanli himself. It seems this lady was planning a diversionary tactic. As for the revered Hanli himself, a profound and rapid chant came from his mouth, was hastily uttered. The melody tablet rose into the air. On its front, points of white light transformed into a dazzling cluster. Within the cluster of light, the faint phantom of a spirit beast could be seen, slowly taking form. At this moment, Hanli unleashed his giant sword technique. He had already activated the giant golden sword, and thrust it downwards with absolute confidence. He himself was an expert in the art of formations, and with the aid of his bright side eyes, breaking a mere illusion was naturally a matter of moments. However, when that yellow-green sphere of light suddenly appeared beneath the giant sword, and other milky white pillars of light shot out from the snowstorm, rushing towards him, the corners of Hanli's mouth twitched, revealing a sarcastic smile. Inside that yellow-green sphere of light was a fist-sized pearl. The pearl was a milky yellow color, and as it rushed forward, it brought with it the sound of thunder. It was clearly a formidable treasure. But Hanli didn't slow the giant sword's momentum in the slightest. Instead, he pressed on with his sword technique. The golden light of the giant sword suddenly surged, and with a roar, it plunged down in an instant. At the same time, those strangely powerful, milky white pillars of light also arrived before Hanli in a flash. Hanli let out a soft breath, and from his mouth, a ball of purple flame shot out. The moment this violet flame left his mouth, it swelled violently in the wind with a whoosh. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a giant fireball the size of a carriage wheel. With a loud bang, the purple fireball split and scattered in all directions, instantly turning into several smaller violet flames, each one flying towards the milky white pillars of light. A deafening roar erupted. Those pillars of light, without the slightest pause, crashed into the violet flames. Flashes of purple and white light flickered. Two types of extreme cold erupted throughout the entire space. Countless golden glows materialized in the void. Streams of a two-colored, chilling mist spread across the entire space in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, on the other side, following a world-shaking boom, that giant golden sword had already viciously struck the milky yellow orb. The collision between the two erupted into a completely different scene. This was because the giant sword and the round orb simultaneously burst forth with golden and azure, two different colored arcs of lightning. The two intertwined and flickered, instantly forming a massive sphere of lightning that was dozens of zhang in diameter. The electrical light was blinding, and at the same time, it emitted a deafening roar. This round orb was actually a rare lightning attribute, ancient treasure. Hanli's opponent paid no mind to the chilling or assailing him. He just waved a single hand, and a layer of purple smoke appeared around his body. As soon as the freezing, chilling mist got near him, it simply vanished into nothingness. But when that giant sphere of lightning appeared, he was truly a little surprised. What kind of lightning is this? It looks like it has quite the origin. It can actually resist the might of the evil warding divine lightning. Han Li, however, was unconcerned that his giant sword had failed. Instead, with a single hand, he pointed at the Sutia cauldron before him. After a loud bang, a flurry of azure threads shot out from it, instantly winding their way toward that sphere. It seemed he intended to forcibly seize the orb and claim it as his own. Seeing this, the middle-aged man in green robes, who was outside the restrictive field, felt his heart clench, and without a second thought for other techniques, he shot out a flurry of hand seals, pouring all of his spiritual power into that orb. This lightning orb was a unique treasure he had obtained in recent years. Although he hadn't been able to fully comprehend it, its power was already astonishing. He was absolutely unwilling to give it up just like that. Instantly, the two-colored sphere of lightning, which had been evenly matched, under the furious assault of that middle-aged man in the green robes, a clear light instantly flashed. The brilliant glow actually seemed poised to overwhelm and force back the golden fox. But Han Li's expression was unusual. His giant sword was formed from the crystallized splashes from the stonefish's mouth. The power of the evil warding divine lightning it contained was naturally far beyond what a mere strand of green lightning contained within a bamboo could compare to. Therefore, with just a thought, the giant sword's intent sharpened. Golden arcs, as thick as the mouth of a bull, appeared on the sword. Then, they transformed into several golden pythons, which pounced menacingly towards the lightning orb below. The green lightning arc, which had just been so imposing, was struck by the combined attack of these golden pythons. It was immediately overwhelmed amidst flashes of lightning and thunderous roars. In the blink of an eye, all the green arcs were torn to shreds. The bead itself was revealed, completely exposed, and at that very moment, from the top of the Zushin cauldron, a green silk thread shot forward as if perfectly timed. With a single rap, it coiled around the bead like a bolt of lightning, and then shot back. In the distance, the middle-aged man in green robes grew extremely anxious. His face was filled with worrying. His hands continuously formed spell signs without stopping. The orb within the green silk began to struggle and shake, looking as if it wanted to break free. Nearby, Bai Mingxin also frowned elegantly. Without a word, her jade-like hand pointed at the mirror she was holding, and then she tossed it into the air. A cold moon rose above the woman's head. The mirror's surface turned into a vast, misty white expanse, but without a word, she opened her mouth and spat a ball of exceptionally pure white energy onto the mirror's surface. A sound like a snake's hiss came from within the mirror. Immediately, a green light flashed, as if something had shot out from the mirror in an instant. But because its speed was too fast, no one could see its form clearly. Han Li, who was directing the Zushin cauldron to retrieve the orb, suddenly twisted his hand. A brilliant light flared from his pupils. The golden light circling in front of him suddenly shot out several beams. Their target was surprisingly all in the same direction. With a loud boom, the streams of golden light exploded in the air before him, as if they had actually hit something. Han Li paid no attention to this. Instead, with a flick of his sleeve, he first forcefully grabbed the blue silk-wrapped bead. He then put it into his storage pouch. Only then did he narrow his eyes and stare at where the golden light had exploded. Over there, as the golden glow faded, he could vaguely make out something. Several golden flying swords were surrounding a strange-looking spiritual pet, locked in a fierce, tumbling battle. This creature looked like a giant scorpion, but it had 2 tails and 4-foot-long wings on its back. The pattern on its back was surprisingly an image that closely resembled a human face. It was enough to make one's skin crawl. It was this strange, entirely jade-green scorpion. It was using its pitch-black, poisonous tails to create a black shadow, shielding its body within it. Those incredibly sharp Xingju Fengyan swords made a jarring sound of metal clashing as they struck it. They were unable to break through its defense and kill the scorpion. The double-tailed, human-faced scorpion let out a low murmur, seeming somewhat surprised. This strange scorpion was actually the spirit insect ranked 29th on the spirit insect list, because of the strange pattern on its back that resembled a human face. Han Li had a rather deep impression of this insect. Therefore, he recognized the spirit insect at a glance. However, the human face on this scorpion's back was still somewhat blurry and indistinct. It had obviously not finished growing, and was still in its larval stage. With Han Li's current divine powers, unless he encountered a fully grown spirit insect from the top 20. As for spirit insects of other rankings, He had nothing to fear. After his surprise, his expression turned grim. He slapped the spirit insect belt at his waist with one hand. Instantly, a loud buzzing sound erupted. A cloud of golden insects whistled as it flew out, heading straight for the strange scorpion. The moment the double-tailed human-faced scorpion saw the insect cloud, it seemed to sense that something was wrong. After a low growl from its mouth, its body immediately blurred, and it vanished from its spot without a trace. But the next moment, it reappeared in another spot, more than 20 jang away. This spirit insect possessed 4 wings, and its movement speed was unbelievably fast. But Hanli just sneered without saying a word. He simply pointed lightly at the insect cloud. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from within the golden cloud. Countless golden sparks shot out in all directions, and in the blink of an eye, they covered an area of over 100 jang. Golden beetles, each several inches long, appeared in terrifying forms, surrounding the double-tailed scorpion, trapping it inside instantly. Far away, Bai Mengshen, who was controlling the scorpion with the treasured mirror, saw this situation, and a bad feeling rose in her heart. She immediately tried to command the double-tailed scorpion to escape the swarm's encirclement, but it was already too late. All the devouring gold beetles buzzed in unison, and from all directions, they turned towards the scorpion and swarmed it ferociously. Although their speed wasn't particularly fast, they were densely packed on all sides, not leaving even a sliver of empty space. The spirit scorpion had no choice but to once again transform its pair of hooked tails into a black shadow, shielding its entire body. Then, its body trembled as it chose a direction, and plunged headfirst into the swarm of devouring gold beetles, trying to forcibly break out. If these were ordinary spirit insects, this would naturally be the most appropriate action for the scorpion to take. But against an ancient and strange insect like the devouring gold beetle, this was simply courting death, because it was using its hooked tails for defense. The scorpion's movement speed had clearly dropped by more than half. Although, using the momentum of its charge, it instantly knocked countless beetles away and rushed out to attack. But even more golden beetles surged forward without a hint of fear, moving along with this swarm of insects. And these gold-devouring beetles were not afraid of any scorpion venom, nor did they fear the sharpness of the scorpion's hooks. The more beetles that latched onto its hooked tail, the slower the movements of this double-tailed scorpion and the waving of its tail became. In the blink of an eye, this old double-tailed, human-faced scorpion was coated in a brilliant golden color. It finally let out a piercing screech. A moment later, the scorpion was completely submerged by the sea of insects, vanishing without a trace. It was devoured completely. When all the beetles, under Han Li's command, flew back again, all that remained in the empty space was a pair of jet black poison stingers, glittering as they floated in the void. Because these stingers were too hard and contained a potent poison, even the golden beetles had little interest in forcefully devouring them. Han Li, however, was quite interested in this pair of poison stingers. He reached out and made a grabbing motion in the air, and the pair of demonic beast materials shot into his hand. After a quick glance, he put them into his pouch. Then, toward the distant, floating, motionless golden greatsword, he took a look. With a thought, the golden greatsword slashed downwards. Golden light flashed and circled the sword, further increasing the might of the slash. Following a tremendous rumbling sound, the spot in the void that was struck suddenly erupted in a brilliant white light. Immediately, the sky full of wind and snow transformed into wisps of radiant mist. As the surrounding scenery changed once again, Han Li reappeared inside the original SPO formation. He had finally escaped the cover of the illusion. Han Li was overjoyed, but he quickly swept his gaze around. The middle-aged man in green robes was taking something from his storage pouch, pulling out a treasure that looked like a copper gong. He looked as if he was about to activate it, and Bai Mengshen, because of the spirit insect she kept in the mirror, also floated up with an ice-cold expression on her face. She continuously unleashed a series of incantation seals from that white mirror, seemingly about to use this path to execute some kind of divine ability. It was quite a sight. Han Li broke out of the formation. Her hand movements slowed for a moment, and her expression couldn't help but change drastically. Inside, a vast expanse of five-colored light flickered erratically, and sinister, explosive crackles echoed endlessly from within. That monk in the embroidered robe was fighting with Olju, and their battle had reached a critical point. Even though they were in a stalemate, it appeared that neither one had the upper hand. This came as a bit of a surprise to Han Li. But what caught Han Li's attention most was the one standing on the giant rock. Master Han Li, from whose mouth a non-stop torrent of incantations poured forth. She was staring at Han Li with a sinister gaze. Above her head, a vast, white Kilin illusion had already taken shape, and at the center of this illusion was that unfamiliar, humming token. Seeing all of this, Han Li's brow twitched. He then silently slapped the storage pouch at his waist. Instantly, a flash of dark light shot out from the pouch. After circling once, it came to a stop, hovering in front of Han Li. It turned out to be a jet black jade bottle, several inches in size. Han Li formed a hand seal, and shot several streams of azure incantation seals into the bottle. The small black bottle spun rapidly, and its opening flipped upside down. A few savage growls came from within the bottle. Immediately, 5 streaks of grayish-white energy shot out from it. In a flash, 5 humanoid skeletons, as white as jade, appeared. When these skeletons first materialized, they were only about a foot tall, but they immediately began to grow wildly, transforming to a height of 20 feet while being wreathed in a baleful, grayish-white aura that was now fully revealed. They let out a strange laughter that would make one's heart tremble in fear. And on the skeletons' necks and limbs, there was a glistening silver ring on each one, as if embedded deep within the bone itself. These were none other than the 5 children concentric demons that Han Li had forcibly subdued. These 5 humanoid skeletons suddenly expanded in size, and immediately spewed a gray, hazy demonic aura from their mouths. Their forms had already closed in. Their eyes glowed with a sinister light as they lunged towards Han Li. Han Li's expression hardened. He began to chant a magical incantation. 5 silver rings instantly erupted in a brilliant, surging flame. The smell of something scorching filled the air, causing the 5 demons to retreat all at once. They let out a series of frantic squeaks, looking utterly terrified. He then raised an arm, opened his mouth, and shot out a thread of green light. It streaked past his wrist, leaving behind a small cut. 5 thumb-sized drops of blood fell from the wound, and shot through the air. They flew with perfect accuracy into the mouths of the 5 demons. Instantly, the light in the demons' eyes changed. Their expressions immediately became docile and submissive. Without the slightest hesitation, Han Li faced the distant middle-aged man in green robes, pointed into the air, and uttered a soft command. The demonic energy surrounding the 5 demons began to roil violently. A savage glint now appeared in their eyes. They all soared into the sky, and with a series of ghostly shrieks and wolf-like howls, they transformed into 5 ghost heads the size of carriage wheels. Each of these ghost heads had green eyes and sharp fangs. From their gnashing mouths came an unnerving, cackling laughter that rattled the soul. They streaked straight towards that elder. While still in midair, they unleashed an overwhelming cloud of grayish-white energy. The sheer power of their advance was astonishingly fast. The 5 child concentric demons, you actually killed their former master. Previously, when the 5 demons had first appeared, the elder had a puzzled look on his face. But now, he finally recognized the 5 demons, and his face instantly turned pale with terror.